Morning, and thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited to have you here. Happy National HSI Week as well. My name is Marla Franco, and I serve as the inaugural Vice President of Hispanic Serving Institution Initiatives at the University of Arizona. And I'm also one of the founders of the AZ HSI Consortium, which serves as our statewide community of practice to support the 20 Hispanic serving institutions here in the state of Arizona. I am so excited to see the launch of today's webinar and really to listen in on this exceptional lineup of panelists, including a set of colleagues employed at different HSIs and students who are members of Latine Greek organizations at these very HSIs. Although today's webinar kicks off a very important discussion about the role of Latine Greek organizations at HSIs, really, my hope and desire is that today's conversation actually begins to stimulate greater support at HSIs for these organizations, and most importantly, the students who lead them. Before we get too far along, I wanted to provide you with some brief context so that we can actually better understand and kind of situate today's discussion. So Hispanic and Latinx college enrollment certainly has grown to historic levels over the past few decades. And so too has the number of HSIs, which now totals 600, making the success of HSIs vital to the strength of this nation. We've also seen increasing support for HSIs from the Biden-Harris administration. Just recently this summer, on July 17th, new actions were released with the goal of advancing equity in economic and educational opportunities, strengthening the capacity of HSIs to provide a high-quality education, increasing opportunities for these institutions to participate and benefit from federal programs, and ensuring that HSIs can continue to be engines of educational opportunity and economic mobility. There is at least one action listed in this new executive order that I think applies to today's webinar, which focuses on identifying best practices for HSIs to scale effective strategies, programs, and initiatives to support the educational success and economic mobility of their students. I would argue that Latine Greek organizations have indeed played a role in facilitating student success. Yet little research has explored this topic, particularly within the context of HSIs. More recently, a qualitative study in 2020 conducted by Dra. Lucy Arellano, the study actually found that students joined Latine Greek organizations in response to experiencing social isolation, where they sought a sense of connection and belonging with others who shared aspects of their own background. Their involvement in Latine Greek organizations helped them navigate large, complex universities and help them center their Latino culture within their college experience. Findings from the study also highlighted ways in which their experiences were distinctly different from mainstream Greeks, often feeling marginalized within the larger Greek system structure. So I say that to share that much more research is needed to explore the impact of these organizations on student outcomes and to really highlight opportunities where our HSIs and national organizations and associations can provide greater support to these students. I know the power of Latine Greek organizations, not necessarily as a student myself, but as an advisor. Over my 25-year career in higher education, I've had the fortunate opportunity to advise Phi Kappa Tau fraternity at Cal Poly Pomona, and now Lambda Theta Alpha at the University of Arizona. Some of my nearest and dearest longtime mentees are LTAs that I met 18 years ago. I witnessed the power of their sisterhood, not just during their time as students, but also ways in which their sisterhood extended far into their personal and professional lives after graduation. My eagerness and interest in exploring this topic is deeply personal and certainly has implications for so many of us who are leading HSI-related work at our respective institutions. So before I hand this over to my colleagues, I urge us to consider the following. This should stimulate some curiosity, some questions, some introspection. What supports are in place at our HSIs to ensure that our Latina Greek organizations thrive? What obstacles do they encounter, and how can we structurally strengthen support for them? Is the leadership and structure of our fraternity and sorority programs at our HSIs inclusive and equitable? How can national organizations and associations partner with HSIs to strengthen support for Latina Greek organizations? And what do our students need? And are we asking them what they need? And for those of you who are researchers, we need more studies to examine all facets of the Latina Greek experience, especially within the context of our HSIs. We also want to hear from you. We've actually created a QR code with 2 questions connected, and we'll post the QR code both at the beginning and at the end of this webinar to solicit your own insights into today's topic. And for those of you who might be watching a recording of this webinar, we plan to leave it open, and we invite you to reply as well. These questions that we want to ask you really center around the following. What are you currently doing at your HSI to support a strong student experience with multicultural Greek organizations? And how can your HSI improve the student experience for those in these organizations? I look forward to today's conversation, and most importantly, I look forward to the work that we have ahead of us. I'm now going to turn it over to my dear colleague and friend, Dr. Carla Silva, who serves as our Director of HSI Initiatives at the University of Arizona. So thank you so much again for being here, and I look forward to today's webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla. It's always great to hear from you. And we're very excited to join today on our webinar with folks from across the country who have different affiliations to different multicultural Greek organizations, as well as folks who have served in national leadership positions, who have served as advisors, as well as our student panelists who will be sharing a little bit about themselves and their journey. So again, as Marla said, my name is Carla Silva. My pronouns are she, her, and Aya, and I serve as the Director for HSI Initiatives at the University of Arizona. I'm also a sister of Kappa Delta Chi sorority and have had the pleasure of serving as a alumni advisor during my time at Colorado State University, as well as here at the University of Arizona. I have also served as an advisor for about 7 years now to Omega Delta Phi sorority here at the University of Arizona. So this work is deeply personal to me, not only as someone who identifies as Latina, who was in a sorority as an undergrad and who has stayed engaged. I've served on our national leadership board of KDCI as well. And so also have been able to kind of see the power of community, of networking, even as an alum when I've moved across the country and being able to connect to folks and just having that shared connection from the get-go. And so I was really excited when we started thinking about what topic we wanted to tackle for HSI Week. Our office likes to think of one topic and really dig deep, right? And so not only hosting this webinar where we bring folks together, but also ensuring that we have follow-up. So at the end of this webinar, it's being recorded, so that'll be, shared out to anyone who registered and attended. We're going to also be gathering those responses from the questions that Dr. Franco shared and sharing that out to you all, as well as, kind of a call to action. So what can we do as folks who work at institutions of higher ed, at HSIs, to really ensure that we are inclusive and welcoming space for folks in fraternities and sororities? And also, how do we connect with each other? How do we work together with the national boards of the different Latina Greek organizations or multicultural organizations? So we're really excited for this webinar, but also the follow-up and what can kind of come out of the conversation that we're having today. So I'm really excited. Like I said, we're joined by a few different folks on this panel today. And so I'm going to have them all also introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their own journeys, what organizations they're connected to, and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and start off and have Cristina Luna, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. Good afternoon. I'm coming from the East Coast, so it's already noon up out here. My name is Cristina Luna. I am currently working at the University of Miami. So my daytime job is I am the Associate Dean of Students and Director of Greek Life here on our campus. So I work very closely with our 28 different fraternities and sororities on our campus to support their success. I am also the National Association of Latino Fraternal Organizations president. So that the acronym is NALFO for our long name there, but nonetheless, just super excited to be a part of this panel in an effort to support our Latino Greek letter organizations and bring more awareness to these groups on our campuses and what support they need to continue to thrive and be successful as avenues for retention and success with our specific student population. I am a hermana of Hermandad de Sigma Iota Alpha Incorporada, SIA, who is a member organization of NALFO. So excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Christine. Manuel, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, buenos días, buenas tardes, everyone. My name is Dr. Manuel Lerial. I am the Executive Director for HSI Initiatives and Inclusion at Metropolitan State University of Denver. And on my free time and when I am engaged in Greek life, I'm a proud brother and member of Sigma Lambda Beta International Fraternity Incorporated. I also advise two other organizations on campus, Lambda Theta Nu Sorority Incorporated, and then Sigma Lambda Gamma and National Sorority Incorporated. So definitely keep myself engaged. I've been an advisor ever since I was in grad school. And so, yeah, and my research has always been around like the service and engagement and the work that we've done. And so really making sure that we talk about the history of Greek organizations and the scholarship and the type of impact that it has in terms of student retention, especially around engagement with our communities. So it's been pretty exciting and happy to be here.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and have our student panelists now introduce themselves. They'll let you know their names, what they're studying, where they're joining us from, their affiliation as well to a Greek organization. So we'll start with you, Kimberly.
Hello, everyone. Just want to say I'm so thankful for this opportunity. My name is Kimberly Alvarado Mata. I am a senior at the University of Arizona, and I belong to Kappa Delta Chi Sorority Incorporated. This year, I had the privilege of being president for the Delta chapter at the U of A, so that is exciting. Like I said, I'm on my 4th year. I'm studying criminal justice and political science with minors in Spanish and criminology. I'm not sure what I want to do after. I still have a year to figure it out, so definitely excited. And again, thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Kimberly. Michael?
Y'all hear me? Good, this microphone works. So hello, my name is Michael Warner. I'm a proud brother of Sigma Lambda Beta International Fraternity Incorporated, like Manny. I actually go to Metropolitan State University of Denver. Manny is the best advisor for us. We love him dearly, so that's awesome. This year, I'm our chapter president as well. I am a senior studying accounting with goals of going to get a master's either here or somewhere else in Denver. So I'm just proud to be here.
Thank you, Michael. And Faith?
Hi, thank you guys for this opportunity. My name is Faith Valdez. I'm part of Alpha Psi Lambda. I'm currently at Colorado State University, Pueblo, and I'm currently studying for my undergraduate in marketing and then my master's in business administration. I'm in like a 5-year program here. Not really sure what I want to do post-grad, but I feel like I still have some time and definitely a lot of opportunities.
Thank you. So as y'all can see, we've got folks from across the country and from different organizations who are really excited for today's conversation. We, of course, have a few questions that we've prepared for our panel, but we welcome, if a question comes up as you're listening, or maybe you already have questions given the intro, feel free to use the Q&A feature and we'll, kind of go through them, but also feel free to use the chat feature, really whichever you're comfortable with. And we'll also have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to go through those questions. But again, feel free to post those in as questions come up so you don't forget them. So for our first question is, we want to hear from folks. Why did you decide to join the Greek organization that you did? And we'll go ahead and start with Faith.
So I decided to join the Greek organization that I joined, because coming to college, I didn't really have my college is 2 hours away from my hometown, so it was a different experience, like college in general. I didn't really have any friends or like family up here, so it's like a scary experience, but I definitely wanted to put myself more out there. At my university specifically, they don't really have too much Greek life. This was one of like three Greek life organizations that they had, so it just seemed like a better fit, like people that I knew from classes, and just people that came from like the same background as me, which was really, it was just like a welcoming, kind of like homey feeling for me personally. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Faith. Christina?
Yes, hi. So I live in Miami, but I'm a born and raised Texan. So very proud. I chose to start my chapter of SIA at Baylor University, which I attended a long time ago, in the early 2000s, after learning that Latino fraternities existed. So we had one fraternity at Baylor, Phi Iota Alpha. And they introduced me to a new world of engagement that I had not seen at Baylor. They embraced cultural awareness and education at a campus that was 79% white at the time, so PWI. And I used to joke around and say, I think it's like 85% white. Like I could just tell I stood out and that I was different, right? It took me a whole semester before I found the Hispanic Student Association. But I actually looked up the demographics one day and I wasn't too far off. It was like 79 point something percent white. I grew up in a small border town where I was the majority. So moving to Waco, Texas was very different. I wasn't shocked, but because I'd prepared for that. My dad, who was an educator all his life, had kind of been like, you need to be ready. You will be a minority, and not only identity and race, but he's like, you're a woman also. So he helped set up different expectations for me. And I wanted to just help diversify my campus and create a new space for belonging, for leadership, and for giving back to the community for others like me. So that is why I chose to start a chapter of SIA, and which was the first in Texas at that time.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Michael?
Hello. So I mentioned because I didn't join my organization until last year, my junior year. I go to MSU Denver, which is a community college. A lot of hardworking people. We're more than 50% people of color as well. I come from first generation parents that didn't go to college. My mom's from Mexico. My dad is just here from the part of Denver. So that was their goal for me, was to go to college. Ever since I was a kid. But once I got to college, it was kind of hard to kind of fit in, especially with the like campus of commuting, and then we all had jobs, all this stuff. So it was not something I considered until I started seeing a lot of leaders on the campus wearing the bright purple letters, and I was intrigued. I was intrigued. A lot of my friends were in this brotherhood that I had no idea about, and that was it intrigued me for sure. I definitely sat on it for a bit, but just kind of it's a special holds special place on this campus, just kind of being able to find that group of people. Because I mean, one thing I heard was there's a study out there that says that once you find that group of people, it doesn't necessarily need to be an organization, an org like ours, but any sort of group or people, that's what gets you to graduate. And when you're kind of alone on campus, you're more likely to drop out and stuff. So once I joined my organization, I felt a connection to the campus. I felt for a place of belonging on the campus. So there's just many few reasons why I joined.
Thank you, Michael. Manny?
Awesome. Yeah. So I'm a founding member of my chapter at the University of Denver. Yeah, again, being a first generation student, so I actually was at MSU Denver, before I started with Upward Bound. And then so I went to a private, predominantly white institution. And so again, right, thinking about like the familismo and trying to build, trying to be involved with student organizations and, doing my research about Greek organizations and then realizing like, hey, I'm on scholarship and, oh, you require $4,000 additionally to be a member. So I think, again, it was also an economic, but then again, that piece too of relationships. And so similar to how other expansion happens, right? There was a brother of Sigma Lambda Beta who was doing his master's there. And so then he let me know that like, hey, there was 4 other chapters at at different institutions in the state. And so really it was like selling piece of, the brotherhood aspect, the community service. And that's where I was kind of like, oh, you said service. Wait, how are we engaging our community? And so it was really nice to also then see like, okay, look, this is really a group for men of color really to come together. And that's what I didn't see in the movies and, about fraternities, right? And so that was a skepticism that I even went into it and being like, oh, let's see. But it was really nice to be able to then see that they actually had proof of what they're doing and engaging in. And so really that was the impetus for me to really start the chapter there. And so now I'm like, geez, 17 years later, here we are. And so that's been important for me, is that piece of familismo and really making sure that, we're leaving a legacy of support, right? And this is what makes us different. Is that we're building that hermandad too, that, it's like it's a family, right? That, regardless of where you leave or whatnot, you still have that connection. And so that really was the impetus for why I joined.
Yeah, I'm already seeing all these different connections, which is really exciting. And then Kimberly will have you share as well.
Yeah, so I joined my organization my sophomore year, and that was kind of a result from what Dr. Franco had mentioned about isolation. So I'm from Tucson, and I live like 7 minutes away from campus. And it was just very different going to the U of A, because growing up all my entire life, I have been with people that look like me, so we're all Mexican. It wasn't until I joined the U of A that I was like, oh my goodness, like we're the minority here on campus, like in this 1 mile like block, where the minority. All my friends went to like ASU, they went out of state, or they just simply didn't continue college. So I was very like by myself. My first year I was in business, I was a pre-business student, and I decided to join an organization or a club through the other school of business. And it was just awful for me. Like there was like, the club was probably of 200 kids, including myself. There's probably only 5 other people that kind of look like me. And it was very, very bad. And so it was my mission for my sophomore year to get involved into organizations or something that, kind of resembled like my values, prioritizing, people that looked like me, just because that's what I had grown up with all my life. And then to come into the U of A, which is just like 7 minutes up the road, and not having that, I was like, you know what, it's going to be my mission. So I actually started looking at clubs, and then I came across the fraternity and sorority programming website, and I saw all of the like sorority club like and all that. I had seen in one of the pictures my friend that I made through like a past job. And I was like, you know what, like this is cool. Like let me check it out. So I had like a list of all the clubs, all the sororities I was gonna go check out. I think it was just like the right place at the right time for me, because that specific week, Katie Kai was hosting their informationals. And I was like, you know what, like I'll just attend, I remember on my calendar, I was like, you know what, I'll attend this information at this time. I'll go to this, I'll go to the ASUA club fair, like I'm gonna do all this. And it just happened to be that Katie Kai was the first one that had an event, and it just like opened up, and then things just fell along. I mean, I met the girls, I felt really welcome, something that I didn't feel that first year. And then I was also living on the dorms because I wanted to give myself the full college experience. And luckily, I'm really thankful that I had my scholarships to help me out in that aspect. So just that one welcoming, seeing people that looked like me, really helped me like fall in love with the sorority. And I've just been here ever since, and it's been like encouraging me to keep taking e-board positions, just to kind of contribute back, because I know I'm not like the only one that has been going through this experience as well.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. As you can see, there's some things that are very similar, right? We heard a lot about feeling welcomed into these spaces, these organizations, maybe because we didn't feel welcome in the greater campus community, right? Of wanting to provide service, of wanting to do, kind of this heart work with folks that maybe look like us. And so even when Michael, you said, I didn't join till junior year, that was me. I didn't join right away. I took my time really kind of trying to find and carve out those spaces for myself. And so obviously folks are on a different journey, but it's exciting to hear the spaces that you all have kind of created for yourself or did create as undergrads to create that community that it seems like most folks were kind of craving or wanting out of their experience. So we're going to move on to the next question. And so we'll start with Kimberly, and just, are there specific people or places during your time, at your institution that you feel have been most helpful in navigating, your college degree?
Yeah, so I think there's not like one specific person or one specific thing that has helped me. Like I had mentioned, I was pre-business my first year, and then I kind of just been switching around. And then it wasn't till last year that I finally confirmed like what I'm studying now. So definitely within KD Chi, I was able to get help from my sisters as well through my academic planning and all of that, just because I wanted to switch from business to political science, but I didn't think I had enough to take it on. And it wasn't until a sister in my sorority that she was like, you know what, just do it. Like, you can do this. Like, I will help you. We're in the same major. She gave me that final push, which helped me. Also, my advisor, since I have like a lot of areas of study, I have a lot of advisors, but there's one specific one that has like really helped me out. He lays down everything what I have to do as terms as to like schedule planning. Also, my school offers it's called the Guerrero Center, which is for Latino students. Hispanic students are all welcome. We also get resources through there. So I just feel it's just like a little bit of everything, just seeking out those opportunities and really taking on what it is that they're offering.
Michael?
Yeah, I have to agree with Kimberly. I don't think like there's been one person, maybe in the fraternity aspect, but we can get there in a second. But there's definitely been when I got here, there's a lot of on-campus jobs, all this stuff. And the first job I actually got on this campus was working in it's called CMEI. It's the Center for Multicultural Engagement and Inclusion. It's right in the heart of our student union, and that really kind of opened like a lot of opportunities up because our Greek, our FSL is located in there, our leadership programs are located in there, events, all that stuff. It's really the heart of the university, and I was working in that heart in a sense. A lot of the people in there, most of the student employees are Greek, from different organizations, and the joke is it's just a matter of time before you become Greek in that office. But yeah, it was actually a brother in the business school though who kind of who took me in, and we were just really good friends at first, like really good friends, spending all the time together, who happened to have one of those beta keys around that Mandy's wearing right there. And then it intrigued me from there. But yeah, he's the kind of one that brought me into my organization, but it was definitely that culture, that center's culture, and people in it who brought me into Greek life and in this work that we do.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Curious to hear, maybe think back to your undergrad experience, but Manny, anything that you felt really helped you navigate college?
Yeah, I think it definitely was that support system. I think for me, and I think kind of what I was talking about too, is that it was that having that support of I was the first generation and first in my family to go, and so none of my family knew how to support me being there, and so for me, I really relied on older brothers, and so really that was always helpful for me, and I think that really is illustrated throughout my trajectory, because even when I was thinking about master's program, I did have brothers that were like, hey, you actually should probably engage in higher ed, and this is the actually job, and then even in my master's program, thinking about like the doctoral program, I had brothers that were already, at Iowa State, and they're like, hey, you should actually come here. And so I think for me, it was having that big support system of brothers that have been navigating the system and being able to be that resource that I never had with my family in that aspect. And so I think that for me, that's always been impactful, is utilizing those resources, and they were the resources, and that's been very helpful.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, it sounds like folks feel a lot of comfort and guidance from, maybe the older members of their Greek organization, or by joining other areas on campus. It's not just Greek life, as Michael shared, working in an office, as Kimberly shared, working with an advisor. So that's great to hear. And we're going to shift it a little bit. So from the students, we really want to hear, what has maybe been the most challenging or difficult part about being in a Greek organization? So we'll go ahead and we can start with Faith.
So for me, the most part, like challenging part at my university specifically, is there's just not a lot of Greek life. So like there's not a lot of resources in terms of advisors or people that are like willing to help us out with like national connections and stuff like that. It's like a big struggle for us to retain members too. Like right now, I think we have 6 active members, which isn't a lot. It's like barely enough for like an e-board, but definitely that's been like the biggest struggle. But it kind of sucks because recently a lot of like Divine Nine is trying to reactivate here, and once that started, it was like a big like, oh, I gotta do it. But like we're like a Latino based fraternity and we're co-ed, so I feel like we're more open to like a lot more people, but there's just not like that like reputation of for like Latino based Greek organizations as there is to other Greek organizations. So that's been like the biggest struggle for us right now at my university specifically.
Thank you for sharing that. Michael?
Yeah, what's really cool about our campus is that the majority of our FSL is multicultural. So there's probably it's not IFC, but it's what's the female version of IFC? Panalytic? Is that it? Yeah, it's Panalytic thing. Sorority, but the rest are multicultural. There's probably about 7 or 8 orgs. Now it's awesome. I love it, but the thing about our campus too is it's also really hard to recruit. Everyone, I mean, my line is an example of this. We all had jobs, we all had families to take care of, we all had priorities. We go to campus and we usually leave. And for my work, specifically in a lot of works, it's a little harder to kind of break through that kind of that grind and show them the importance of Greek life. Now, at least for my work in this state, I get a lot of help from the state because we have 5 chapters of my org in the state. So Manny's campus, I'm able to call in the cavalry if I need some help, if we're low on brothers for recruiting, stuff like that. But it's definitely just getting students to kind of recognize the value. You have to approach them in a very certain way and again, kind of show them the love. You got to come up with love first and show them the love. So I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's really common, and after Kimberly shared, we'll be asking Cristina and Manny to share a little bit from, being an advisor or leading, a group like NALFO. But I think that that is a common thread we're seeing. There is a lot of challenges kind of post-COVID in particular around recruitment. So I think you're kind of showing that to us now, Michael, and we'll have our advisors as well as, our president of NALFO also share that in just a minute. But Kimberly, maybe for you all, what do you see as a challenge?
Yeah, so for us, we're very fortunate that we really don't have an issue with recruiting. What we do have a little bit of an issue, and this is my personal opinion, is diversifying who fits into the Hispanic and Latino category. So here in Tucson, or at least from my perspective, because I'm from here, we're more like Mexican Americans, and that's basically what the entire chapter is made of, Mexican Americans. So we don't have issues in terms of recruiting, but I feel like a little bit more diversifying the whole Latino Hispanic portion of it. I think that's pretty much it. I would say, like, for me personally, being in the president position, just like managing everything. And since we are, like I said, very fortunate to have a couple like members in our organization, it is sometimes a little hard to be navigating a lot of these girls when I also have like my full plate of like I have my job, I have like my role as a student, and then I still have like to take care of my family. It's just like sometimes hard to juggle, but I mean, everything's possible. It's just like balancing that out.
Yeah, the juggling of so many roles, especially when students are in e-board positions, right? And having to work, take care of family. I think that that's something we see a lot. And so, right, maybe something to consider for folks on this call is like, how are we supporting maybe those folks, right? The e-board members, how are we always thinking about them holistically? They're not just students, they're not just a president of a sorority, but they have all these kind of competing responsibilities. So I'll pose the same question to both Manny and Cristina, but what has been challenging as an advisor, and then Cristina, what has maybe been challenging leading NALFO the last few years?
Yeah, so I can say that I've had the opportunity to serve my organization, SIA First, in many capacities, from chapter advisor, expansion director, to national president. And we have to realize and acknowledge that we're very young organizations that are feeling the growing pains of development and growth. So we have not been around over 100 years, 150 years, as some of our peer organizations have been. And there are tough decisions that need to be made for the best interest of the organization on a larger level. to for sustainability in an ever-changing environment of higher education institutions. So generations of students change within the years. My organization was founded in 1990. We do not operate like we were when we were founded, right? And my research specifically was on the perspective of our new member education process, from members that go through it, right? And the student of today needs to feel like there's a value add and benefit for joining. So how we educate new members is important to build the future leaders of our organizations that will want to embrace like our history, our traditions, but also adopt and grow alongside some changing environments. And what I can speak to when it comes to recruitment and the challenges we see with recruitment, we have to also own that, as director of a community, what I've seen in the fraternal landscape is Panhellenic and IFC, who are much larger, yes, have been around for many more years. Their viewpoint when it comes to recruitment is any student on campus that is not wearing letters, right? Like that is a target potential new member. Sometimes our population or our search for recruitment is different, and we make our pool much smaller, or we're seeking a very specific student. And I think our lens, if we open up a little bit and change that, I have had people that joined SIA who are not of identity with the Latino culture, but they value what we stand for, what we do, how we address academic excellence and support for women in education, how we support solidarity, right? And how we embrace just diversifying our campus. And that is a connection to them, right? People recruit people. And so I think sometimes just opening our lens up to the way we approach recruitment is really important, especially as many of our groups were impacted after COVID with visibility and opportunity for growth.
Yes, to everything Cristina said, and being the advisor on that aspect too, like again, like on the student side, I think there's also training that should be available for advisors, right? Especially folks that aren't Greek, and then they just jump into this role because then I let them know like the nature of Greek life, and I think that that's also important because then students are navigating so many different dynamics like academics, time management, leadership, where again, having retreats for them in the beginning and the end of the semester, and just again setting a structure for them so then that way they're not having 10 events, and I'm like, that's not sustainable, right? Bring it down. Like you can still have an impact. What for, right? And so I think that that's also important too, to make sure that you're supporting the students, because then that's burnout. Like again, knowing that students have so many different things, like for our campus, commuter, campus. So again, how does that help them? And so I think serving in those roles to making sure that students aren't dying out, or burning out in that sense. And then for me, I think it's been interesting, like working with the FSL office and making sure that again, the accreditation that they're looking for, it meets with the students and what I'm prepping them for the year, to then say, okay, make sure you're keeping track of all the events that you have, because again, you're going to need to, have this ready for the accreditation. I think also as well, another challenge is like when leadership leaves, right? Especially when you have amazing students like Michael, right? That are, they're getting ready to head out. Like, what does that transition look like? What does knowledge look like? Because then again, you have students that have all these amazing relationships with the community, with all organizations. And when they leave, that relationships leaves with them. And so like, what does that look like to get them in, especially when they're doing events in the community? And then like documenting, like, you know what I mean? Like I sit here and I'm like, hey, president has documents. Did y'all connect that? So I could think that that's been a huge in terms of advisor, really making sure that students are prepping for the transition and ebbs and flow of the chapter, but then also making sure that the needs are, and then just different chapter dynamics as well. Like, there's some that, there might not be really good communication, right? And so making sure that, again, students have what they need, because then again, it can get stressful. And I think then in the midterms and finals, that's where you have students like, I'm out. So again, it's really making sure that they have what they need to then be successful. And then when we're talking to them about like, what does servingness mean? I'm like, you got to define that. Like, what programs are you doing? How are we collecting that? And then also expecting them that they're students and be like, hey, when we're talking about assessment, we got to provide them with those forms, not expect these students to be like, oh my gosh, I'm having an event. I need to evaluate how did it go? No, that's your job to then make sure that we're creating that environment of data collection.
No, I really appreciate what everyone shared. I think, Manny, what you were just saying brought it up. In our office, we often talk about like the servingness aspect. Obviously, I mean, we're in HSI and I work in the HSI office. So that is, all day, every day. But we often talk about, what would it mean for, we're less maybe worried with the student being able to define servingness. We're more worried about, do they feel like they were served, right? Do they leave this institution? And obviously right now we're talking specifically about our Latine Greek organizations as a method and a tool for students to feel welcomed and like they're creating a community. But we're more concerned with when, when Kimberly graduates the U of A, that she walks away saying like, I feel really good about my experience here. I feel I'm equipped with the tools and the skills, and I'm leaving this place with a community, with friends, or maybe folks I will consider kind of my chosen fun media. And so I think that you bring up a lot of those good points, and kind of hearing the landscape is really helpful. I'm actually going to jump into a question that we got in the Q&A for our students because I think it's a really good question. So I'll read it out loud. So for our student leaders, so Kimberly, Michael, and Faith, whoever wants to go first, have you felt support from chapter leaders outside of the multicultural or culturally based Greek orgs, including, Pan-Hellenic, IFC, any of those groups outside of the councils that are not culturally based? If so, what does the support look like? What has been more impactful?
I can go first. So, like I said, this is my first like term being president, and like school just started probably like 3 weeks ago. So I haven't really, ever since like I joined 2 years ago for the sorority, I haven't really noticed anything from like IFC or Panhellenic. However, that is in the works of changing because our multicultural council is USFC, so United Sorority Fraternity Council, and we have two of our sisters in the board, and they have a lot of communication with Panhellenic, like the Panhellenic board and the IFC board. And I know like in that perspective, they are trying to have us mingle a little more. But then again, it's like it's different because all the multiculturals are like organizations are smaller, and Panhellenic is like 5 times bigger than we are, 6, 7, 10. Like it's very hard, but I know that we are trying to like reach out, and there have been talks of starting off like baby steps with potential socials. Our council does hold like events. For example, one of our events called is Triple S, which is an event where it's for strolling, saluting, and stepping. And that is open to all, and it's always promoted towards like Panhellenic and IFC. And sometimes they come around, sometimes they don't, but there's not really that like much support that I can say for me personally, me noticing, but it is in the works.
Michael or Faith, anything?
Sure. So my campus is very interesting. We only have one Panhellenic org. And we do have at least 3 D9 orgs as well that are on our campus as well. At least from the president of the Panhellenic org, we've had a great working relationship. I've known her for a long time. We're really good friends there, and we definitely try to support each other with social stuff like that. But one thing our campus, or at least our campus, decided to do differently was we had a multicultural Greek council. We looked last year to expand that to a united Greek council. So that would include now this Panhellenic org as well. So our goal is definitely kind of to break down those barriers and definitely work together, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're all Greek-led organizations. They may have different principles, different reasonings for being than us, but we're all here to support each other on campus.
If I can share, Carla, I just wanted to add, as someone who advises, I advise Panhellenic, but I've also advised MGC and our MPHC groups. I, in the advisor capacity, really try to help with cross-council relations and just also the language that is used by our groups to ensure that it is inclusive of all groups, right? So when we say sorority recruitment, that we're not lumping everyone into that expectation, right? Because our multicultural groups do not participate in Panhellenic primary sorority recruitment, right? So we ensure that the language we're using is correct and educating correctly the community. When our students table for our board, which is the Association of Greek Letter Organizations, that they're well versed on all the councils. And if I just come up and ask, I would like to join a sorority, that I'm educated enough as a student leader to discuss, well, these are all the councils that have sororities, right? Not just go straight to Panhellenic. Panhellenic also does a showcase that they as like a 101, and they share, just as an FYI, we do have sororities in these councils, and they'll share a brief description of them, right? IFC's kickoff barbecue, they invite all the other men's groups to also join the barbecue, even though they're not a part of the IFC council, right? So there's opportunities there where it's like you can take advantage of the visibility that those councils have in the spaces to also create some inclusivity and exposure, even though you don't participate in the same recruitment styles and formats. So helping cross some of those barriers, build relationships with the students.
I agree with everything Cristina said too, being like a house dad for SAE and so many, and then and I think again too, it's also important too for Greek offices to like keep timelines and keep this data and like history, because at the University of Denver, like I was like, I did all that. Like they were like, I had all the Panhellenic at all of our events, had all these things, but then like the transition now of the director and everything, like everything just lost. So I think it's important too that it's like that we have these relationships and that we're building them, but then also that we're documenting the history of these organizations, because it really kind of like pisses me off when I go to my campus and people are like, oh, I don't know what Sigma Beta has done on this campus. And I'm like, well, we have 17 years worth of really good. I was like, I have a list, I got receipts, I got awards, you know what I mean? So I think like that's also very important too, is that we're also educating folks on like these relationships do exist and they have already existed. And so I think that that's important too, to also keep track of that as well. Because again, there's ways to build that. And I think that education is also important too, because then that also gets that education and making sure that the Greek life knows this culture, then mitigates folks disrespecting folks at like Greek awards and things like that, or wanting to mimic, multicultural Greeks. Things like that is what you mitigate when you're educating the whole culture of what's going on. And it's also helpful too, right, to then be like, oh, well, because you don't want those students that are like, oh, I didn't know your org exists. And I'm like, yeah, 17 years. Thank you. I'm glad you didn't learn that in recruitment, but yes, we do exist, right? So things like that. But thank you, Cristina, for saying that.
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful because obviously this shows, right, like that this is an area of improvement, right? What's the relationship between all of the different councils at your institution? Is there one, like Manny's saying, and it's just like folks don't know? How is that a way that you maybe work with your director or any of the full-time staff that work in your fraternity and sorority programs, or, we call it FSP here. I know people call it FSL. So whatever your office is for fraternity and sorority programs, how, as even advisors, right, is there some kind of way to come together as a group of advisors for your multicultural Greek councils? Is there a way to ensure that when there's turnover in the office level for, your directors, your associate directors, your coordinators, that they are also informed of what are the current, maybe relationships between IFC, Panhellenic, and again, we call ours USFC, but whatever your organization is called there. And kind of just making sure to keep those lines of communication open. Thank you all. I also really like another question that came into the chat, so I'm gonna pose this question. But for our student leaders, again, what are some of the support you all have gotten from your alum chapters in the area? So wherever you're from, what support have you seen? What kind of engagement have you seen with your alum chapters? And then we'll flip that to our advisors in a little bit.
So for my chapter specifically, I'm the only one in my from Colorado. We have an affiliate chapter right now that just started at CU Denver, so we're kind of supporting them. So for us, it's been a little bit of a struggle. Like we normally just reach out to nationals a lot and kind of get their perspective. we see like, cause like ours is in Illinois, they have like way more chapters like next to each other. It's a lot bigger over there. And like from their perspective, they have like connections, they could go to each other's events, each other's recruitment, that kind of thing. But for us here, we heavily rely on our alumni. And in like years past, they've been like super supportive, but they're also like getting older, like starting their own lives and stuff. So it's hard to like continue to rely on that type of support. But we've definitely tried to make that connection with the affiliate chapter at CU Denver, just so like we could keep that. Hopefully they come to ours, we go to theirs type of thing. But it's definitely been a struggle for us. We heavily rely on nationals, but that's kind of it right now.
Michael, do you want to share at all how you engage with alumni or what support they offer?
Yeah, so at least for my chapter in the state, we have really engaging alumni. I mean, Manny is one of them. Manny is a example of alumni who are very engaged. Whatever we kind of need. A lot of it is just advice, how to do kind of certain things, how we operate. I mean, we had to meet the Greeks here last week for saying. And I was able to kind of call in the Calvary, and alum from all across the state came to that event to support. So I'm proud to say, like, at least for my chapter and my Oregon, Colorado here, we have a great alum. We're not necessarily an alumni network yet, but we have a great group of alum who support the chapters. There's something called an entity-specific fund is what they do, but they donate to that fund, which we can use for put on a youth leadership conference or do scholarships and stuff like that. So whether it's financially, whether it's emotionally, whether it's physically. Hey, can I stay a place for a night? I know I've stayed in many alums' house. Just they'll give you the shirt off their backs, and I'm very proud to say we have very supportive alumni in my work.
I can go next. So I know like a lot of things have changed for my chapter after COVID, like post-COVID, a lot of things got lost. And I know one of the things that did get lost was reaching out to alumni. And that's what I'm like really excited this year because I want to bring that back because we do have a lot of alumni. And last semester we had our new member celebration. So when we presented our whole new group of girls and a lot of alumni came out. So that was really exciting. And I feel like there just hasn't been that proper introduction. So this semester, I'm definitely going to be working with our advisors to kind of get more involvement. They usually are like invited to like a lot of our events. However, I think it's more of building that one personal one-on-one connection and building that relationship back up. Because like mentioned before, like during like transition times, like from one president to another, that does get lost. And that is something that definitely like is on my list to help repair because I know like in the past they would help with funding for our regional conferences. So I know like 2 years ago we went to LA and we got help from alumni sponsoring us because it was, I mean, LA is really pricey. So I know like we definitely did get a lot of help back then, and that's something that is definitely something that I'm going to be working on this year.
No, thank you all for sharing. And I know, kind of in relation to what you were saying, Kimberly, right? Some organizations will have alumni chapters. So here in Tucson, up until last year, we did have, a Katie Kai alumni chapter. But again, sometimes engagement with alum can be really difficult to take on these voluntary leadership positions. I was the president of our alumni chapter last year, and this year I was like, I've got other things I have to do. So, having to step down sometimes. And then it can be difficult to rally. Tucson has a lot of alumni for our organization, but it can be hard because folks have families, they're working, some are in school. And so how do you, engage alum in a meaningful way, but that is obviously capacity wise needs to look differently just given, where they are in life. So I think that's really good. And then Cristina and Manny kind of thinking about, y'all have served as advisors to your specific organization. You have also served as maybe different connectors, but how do you all see, your roles as alum engaging with your sorority or fraternity?
Well, I would say, I mean, not only as alum, but like what colleges and universities could do better to support us is just, it starts with genuine investment and support that is needed for students in these multicultural Greek letter orgs, right? The student experience and their pathway to college is very different and unique, and we must listen to understand These students, once they sit in your chair in your office, they will talk. They will share stories, right? They will share because they're excited that someone wants to listen and wants to know. I think being present when it matters and investing time to mentor these members. So being at an event is memorable for these students. It's like me when I played sports all growing up and seeing my dad in the stands cheering me on and calling my name out and you got this, mija, whatever. That is the same similar type of feeling when students see us as advisors, us as campus fraternity sorority staff at one of their events that they invited you to. It's like seeing a parent in the crowd cheering them on, and they remember. You know, we can't be at everything, right? But it's very valuable in that relationship when working with students from these organizations. And then knowing the capacity you have to advocate for these students in funding and space allocation, participation in leadership conferences they may have never known existed or their organizations don't know existed, but you do, is very valuable. So knowing how to include them in these spaces for visibility and partnerships are just as important. At a previous campus I was at, University of Central Florida, which is an HSI, our associate vice president was like, why have I never heard these students ask that they wanted to go to a leadership conference, right? He's like, I will fund it. I just have never heard them say they want to go and they want to be there. And honestly, these students didn't even know. They knew IFC and Panhellenic went to conferences. They're like, we just don't have money, so we don't want to bother looking into it. And once I taught them about, hey, there's these conferences that happen that bring together Greeks from across the country. You'll meet members from your own organizations there that provide new skill sets for you as members of these groups. They were like, how do we go? How can we get there? How can we be a part of those experiences? And so helping them narrate that to a leader at a university, and they're like, you know, the students have so much more power than we do. Sometimes I feel like I could shout till I'm blue and purple, but when they hear it directly from a student, they're like, let's make this happen, right? How can we help them get there to achieve the success that they want?
I also agree that we don't really do such a good job with like alumni engagement just with our organizations nationally as well. Like I feel like that's just one thing that's missing, right? Is like how to be active alumni, because again, you also have the ones that are like wanting to be too involved and like, no, there's little barriers, there's barriers, right? Because you also want to make sure to respect the current active members, right? And so I feel like again, I started the Rocky Mountain Alumni Network here in the state, and so I think, but again, it's also like figuring out what are the needs for the alumni and how to engage them, and so I think that education is really huge there. But also it's an opportunity, right, for us as HSIs, right, to use as a leverage, because we're saying like if we're going to be, you know, like Dr. Gina Garcia says, unapologetically HSI, right? And so that's my thing is like if we're going to say community engagement and be in the community, these are organizations that have that connection. Like I don't go to the University of Denver at all, but once my chapter hits me up and they're like, hey, we're dying off. Hey, I need an alumni. I'm all like, I got you. Oh, education process. I got all your classroom sessions, like things like that, right? So for me, I tell these institutions, if we're really trying to engage, you know, our community, we need to reach out to these organizations because these are the ones that are having youth leadership conferences. They're the ones connecting with our high schoolers, right? And so we need to give them the resources that they need. And so thankfully, I've been able to look at our alumni that do have connections with K-12 that are in the districts and making sure that we're doing MOUs with the school districts and making sure that we're paying for that transportation for students to come on campus. So again, I know that leads more into that relationship, but making sure that, hey, Greeks are a connection. And like when even taking it out, like minority serving institution, right? Like I always tell folks, like the Deltas were always the ones doing STEPS shows on our campus. And I'm like, if we're talking about Black student success, those are the organizations that were here. So we need to reach out to some of their alumni, and that's how we engage them. So various opportunities.
Yeah, and I'm gonna kind of, Manny, thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna move us to a question that I'm like, oh, you're kind of already talking about this, but like, let's get into it. So really posing this for Christina and Manny, so how do you all see HSIs contributing to these Greek organizations? How are they maybe creating relationships with national organizations? And if they're not, how would you encourage HSIs to do these things?
I'll just keep going. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Christina. Go for it.
Go ahead.
All right. One thing that I'm doing is actually making sure that I'm bringing the leaders of these organizations into my HSI committee meetings. Because one thing about us is we're a commuter campus. we're trying to build our academics as well with our programming. And so again, how do we be more resourceful with our events? And so making sure that, hey, if we have students doing youth leadership conferences and we're bringing key speakers, how do we connect that? So then that way we could then make sure that we're using funding collectively and bringing students together. Also bringing them into the spaces of HSI committee, HSI week programming, making sure that they're knowledgeable about that as well has been really good. Again, connecting them with students and resources on campus has been huge. And then as well, like connecting with the FSL office. So I did like an HSI MSI servingness workshop with students, because again, students don't know what they don't know. So again, letting them know like, hey, we're an HSI. This is what this term servingness means. So if someone comes and wants to do research and ask, how is MSU Denver serving you? This is what it means, right? And then educating them on like how the institution's even accrediting them. And so right now I'm also working on a pilot for data collection to then say, this is what we're looking at with these organizations, because right now, if we're saying Greek orgs are impacting student retention, we don't necessarily have that data. And so for me, it's my job to then use this as a pilot and engage with our students and bring them in the mix always.
So I do work with some of our stats people sometimes, because data and retention is super important. And at every campus that I've been at, Greek Life retains that first year student into sophomore year at much higher rates. And so like at right now, we're like between 92 and 94% that as freshman comes back to the second year for sophomore year. And that is the specific stat for members in my community of fraternity or sorority. So they'll do the cohort of freshmen that joined. And that speaks a lot, right? It says to the volume of why these groups help retain students, find a place away from home, peers with similar interests and common goals that they can see themselves in, and want to grow their experience on this campus, right? Find a space for retention to support their graduation. I would also say staff that looks like us, like them, is crucial, that can mentor and help guide students to navigate their in and out of classroom experiences, right? So whether that is already directly connected in the FSL office or not, helping them connect with staff across campus, that would be crucial to their not only organizational success, but individual success. That is what helped me at Baylor. When I reached out to the student activities office and said, I want to start a new group, they connected me to Dr. Elizabeth Palacios, who's well known in higher ed, in NASPA, and was a very strong Latina woman at Baylor, who did her undergrad at Baylor herself, and grew her career through there, now retired, but helped us navigate what an experience at a PWI was at that time, and starting a new culturally based group. So that was an immense support for us to navigate starting a new organization. And then for me, when I work, I have a chapter of Lambda Theta Alpha on my campus. And when I work specifically with their alumni volunteers, I have to know that their capacity to connect with me during the daytime may not be as accessible as volunteers who are paid versus paid staff, right? Paid staff from other organizations travel, have an 8 to 5 job, they're fully on staff. I have to know that my LTA, or even, KDCAI, any of my groups, want to meet in the evenings, right? After 5, because that's when they're done with their job and this is now volunteer work, or that I have to meet with them during lunch break because that's the one time they can maybe focus and apply. So that flexibility is huge for knowing how to navigate the relationships with headquarters staff, because as most of our groups are, I think there may be 1 or 2 that have a paid staff member, but majority of us are all volunteer run organizations. So that is crucial to the relationships you build with those groups.
No, and that's so important. I'll say this at the end too, but we are going to be sending out a 1-pager with some recommendations as well, and from both that have shared today, so that you all kind of have that to use at your own institutions or within your own national organizations. So you're hearing it today live, or if you're watching this recording, but we will also send out a nice one pager that you can reference later as well. So want to ask students if these HSIs are really committed, right, to enrolling our Latine student population, to getting them to graduation. What do you all as student leaders think that they should be doing to support this population? Maybe we'll start with Mike.
Yeah, one thing that I think would be kind of like cool to see, and it's slowly getting there. We're slowly kind of breaking this down, but getting a lot of the leaders of these institutions to come to events like the art show. The art show was last semester. I know the chief of staff of our president went, but I would love to see kind of our president, our not dean of students, our president, dean of students, vice president for students, all student affairs, come to these events and see what's keeping students here, what's drawing campus, especially like in student affairs per se. The people leading some student affairs, I sometimes see that they're kind of above the clouds, not quite seeing what's going down below. Whereas like I'm over here like planning events with other orgs, like we're keeping people on campus, and if I really truly believe that philosophy of like once you find your group, that gets you're that much more likely to graduate, like 95%. If that is a true kind of true kind of philosophy that I hold, then I would love to see kind of these student affairs officials really interact more. I mean, I get it, you get paid a salary over there in the president's building, but I mean, I would love to see it at our events more.
Yeah, showing up, right? Like, how are you showing up in these spaces, supporting, reaching out, telling other folks in your office, like, hey, like, can you stay? Can you come during a tabling event? Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Kimberly?
Yeah, I agree with the representation in faculty and staff. I think that definitely is something that would help, especially in schools where, like, for example, here in Tucson, like most of the community is made up of Hispanics. You go into the U of A and there's not really many of us. So just kind of seeing those like prominent figures also help. I know for me personally, I was having issues with FAFSA for me this year because of my situation. I'm a first generation student, like both my parents immigrated from Mexico. So just I feel like also financially, like financial aid literacy could also help, just because with the especially like in regards to FAFSA, because there were so many issues, and like truth be told, I was able to submit mine probably like 2 weeks ago, and it was just very, very, very stressful because I was reaching out to all these places and nobody was really helping me out, just passing me around. So I think just like offering those type of like resources and really having, because I know like again only one can do so much, like we don't all work for financial aid, but just kind of like being that extra support system would definitely help. And then yeah, just being like Michael had explained, like just being present also does, I mean, a little does go a long way. So I think just seeing overall, just seeing that representation and seeing that, like si se puede, like, we're here, like everybody has to do like their part, and like eventually, hopefully we can become the majority, but right now it's just a little bit of baby steps.
Hey.
I agree with what's been said so far. Definitely like emphasizing the collaboration a lot more with especially like organizations that aren't necessarily Greek affiliated, just different organizations that like embody like the same culture aspects and such. In the past, it's been a little bit hard for at my university specifically, but there's like new leadership with new organizations this upcoming year. So hopefully moving forward, things will run a little bit more smoothly, and like people are more willing to collaborate and just be like more supportive at our events, and then like vice versa, like we'll be more supportive at their events. But I also think it's important to talk about like faculty advisors too, because I feel like for ours, kind of like what was mentioned in the chat, like overworked and underpaid, like they have all these different roles. They're advisors of like multiple different organizations, and it's just like it all like crumbles, and then the student organizations are the ones that like have to pay the consequences for that. And it's tough, especially with at my university specifically, there's not a lot of Greek life, so we don't really have somebody that's like, oh, like what Greek life is, like the process, all this stuff. Like they're just kind of like expecting us to like give them all this information instead of like being educated themselves on the matter. So it makes it a lot more difficult to get like their understanding for certain things.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. And Faith, I think, right, like the demographics of your institution absolutely play a role and have an impact. I know at my institution, they are now an HSI, but when I was an undergrad, they were a predominantly white institution, a PWI. And we had two multicultural sororities at that time. And all of their advisors came out of the multicultural center, one large center. And when you think about that, right, like who, so not only, you know, what was said in the chat about our staff being underpaid and overworked, but you're typically that also ends up being folks of color, right? And so there's all these different layers to the extra labor we're asking these folks to do. And most of us will do it like, right, like we'll do it because we know how important these Greek organizations are, whether or not we had that experience in undergrad. We just know how good of an experience it can be and that it can lead students to feel welcome, but to also retain, to graduate. And so it's a weird balance, right, for staff to have to figure out, okay, so if I am an advisor or I'm working with a group, like how do I do that to make sure that you all feel equipped and supported? So I'm gonna ask one more question. From our pre-planned ones, and then I am going to move towards the Q&A. So I know we have a few in the Q&A, so if folks have any other questions that they want to input, I would say, you know, start inputting those now so that we can get to them. And then anything we might not get to, we're happy to have our panelists kind of type something out, and in that follow-up email, make sure that we provide their responses or even some resources for you all. So kind of the last question on our end is, I'm just curious for all of our panelists, how do you all see, and we know, but how do you all see what is the impact or value that your organization adds to these HSIs? So maybe we'll start with Michael.
Yeah. So the impact of my value organization, we're actually going to be celebrating our 20th anniversary here on this campus. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, planning that's going to be is another level of working through some of that, but I'm very happy to be the president of that celebration. But also, I think a lot of it is the culture. We know this campus. We've been here much longer than a lot of these higher education officials. I think we were here before we were even HSI, MSU Denver was an HSI. We were doing the work, the community that was being done long before our institution kind of caught on to it. And I think we have a lot of that. We have a lot of that wisdom that comes with it. We know who our community is, and I think that's what our organization kind of offers. And the same thing kind of goes for a lot of the other kind of Greeks on our campuses, because a lot of the Greeks are new, a lot more are new, kind of popping up. We were the second one to be established here, so we kind of know how the campus operates, how to mentor the other organizations coming in, I think.
Maybe we'll go Manny. So how you see Greek organizations contributing or adding value?
Yeah, like I was talking about too, is like, again, when we're saying like, again, if you're going to be an HSI that is committed to the community, like these are the orgs that are the liaisons already doing the work. So again, it's like, how are we engaging with them? How are we prepping them? Like again, for the organizations that are doing youth leadership conferences, for me, I'm all like, why aren't you already connected with our admissions office? Because again, they're doing pretty much our job. So then it's always kind of like my role to then say, okay, we need to connect them with admissions, making sure that they have the resources, because again, it's really supporting us. So I feel like Greek organizations are the assets, are the programs, are the initiatives that we need to invest in, because again, these are our students, right? And so again, I feel like so many ways too of, if these students have a great undergraduate experience, hey, that we could maybe sell them graduate school, because oh my gosh, they're going to have such a great experience here that they're going to come back, and hey, they might serve as advisors to these orgs, right? So again, so I feel that just knowing the familismo and connecting with that of these organizations, because that's what really makes them unique, right? Like these are organizations that aren't just like, okay, cool, I'm going to be a president, I'm going to graduate and leave. No, there's that family piece there that I'm all like, and that's always going to continue. So if we nurture that, if we develop that support already from the get-go, this is our end to really build that community, really get alumni, and really contribute to retention of these groups as well. So we have a layout. It's there. We just got to use it and be unapologetic about it.
Faith?
I think for like Greek organizations add value and impact because it's creating like that comfortable space of people who come from like the same background or like similar backgrounds. But like was mentioned earlier, it's also inviting more people to learn about it as well and not just being so close-minded to like, oh, like if you don't fit like these criterias, like we're not like accepting of you, but it's more like opening it up and being like, oh, we want to teach you about like our culture. We want to teach you about it so like you could understand it in like a greater aspect and go ahead and like move forward and share that and then like create like a bigger chapter as well. I think like coming from a Hispanic serving institution, this is my 4th year and this is like this first year that I've actually seen them like embody that like Hispanic serving institution aspect, because like in years past it just honestly like to me it comes off as like a PWI, but now like they have more resources, more like accessibility, and just like sharing like more of the culture as a whole from the university, which I think is really great.
Thank you. And I think that's great, to also for us to hear, and not great, but it's good for us to hear, right? You're saying I've been at this HSI for a few years, but it still felt like a PWI, right? And so then what does that mean when you have this identity, but students maybe don't feel, right, that they're being served or in the ways that they would really like? So thank you, Faith. We'll go, Christina.
Yeah, so I just want to acknowledge that, like, when we're looking at non-academic outcomes, they're much harder to measure and assess, right? When it comes to understanding the value we add as organizations. That's why I think it's really important that our Greek letter organizations from all foundings and histories, they need to tell their stories. They need to share the positive contributions that they have on campus and in the local community, to share the successes of their members, both undergrad and grad, because your membership in your organization played a role in that. And sometimes, I think sometimes in our culture, it could be frowned upon to like toot your own horn or boast about your accomplishments so much that you're seen as arrogant. But this is where we need to not let anyone kind of dim that shine and purposefully share. Because that is also where the storytelling really brings out the value of our organizations, the contributions that we have to campus and the community, and why we're important. So I think that's important to not forget. Plus, as fraternities and sororities, I always say we build a unique loyalty to a campus community, right? I think the only other people that maybe do that are athletes, right? Because they want to come back, they want to give to the university, especially if you had a good experience. Like, you're part of the chess club, you're part of the chocolate club, whatever other Harry Potter club exists on campus, right? But you never come back or have the same loyalty as someone who's a member of a Greek letter organization to that university, because now you have another level of passion for that campus, for that experience. So that not only helps universities, sometimes maybe seek support from these students because they had a good experience and they want someone else to have a good experience that comes after them. But just as much as we continue to support our chapters, as you can see, Manny and Michael have a really great relationship from that alone.
Thank you. Kimberly, anything you wanted to add before we switch over?
I think pretty much everybody just discussed just like providing that sense of belonging. And then within like that sense of belonging, organizations can help like academically, especially for like the Hispanic and Latino organizations. A lot of us are first generation students where like our parents didn't get, an education. And it's just sometimes really hard to find your community. So definitely just providing those resources and just being an advocate. I know like a lot, like right now with what's going on, like, in the US, there's just been like a lot of tensions, like politically. And then sometimes there's like people that have, that are just like underrepresented, like the Black Lives Matter movement, where we can come in and all support, because at the end of the day, like we're all here to support each other, and we are all are underrepresented. So just basically having like fostering that sense of belonging, and as well as like increasing like cultural awareness, I think is what these organizations help. Because I mean, or at least for us, even though we are like KDKI is like a Hispanic Latino sorority, we do still like to like be support for the other orgs on campus with whatever issue it is, whatever topic it is that's going on right now. So yeah, just networking, definitely.
Awesome, thank you. So we've got a little bit of time to answer some of the questions in our Q&A. So we got two questions that are a little bit similar that are around funding sources. And I think Kimberly, you and Christina, you all have kind of mentioned a little bit of like funding, but folks are curious, outside of maybe an internal budget from like dues, or if FSP or your institution provides any funding, what are opportunities that fraternities or sororities, these multicultural ones, have. So whether that's things like, folks in the Q&A said, are you fundraising to send students to conferences? Are you working with a foundation on your campus? Yeah, we'll leave it there. So any information on, budgeting structures for your institution or your organization?
Yeah, so I would say some different outlooks that I have seen. One, we have a vice president of student affairs that is very open to listening to the student needs, and really keen on observation, right? What is the campus providing and not providing? So she at times will self identify needs, and I have been very emphasized and focused on ensuring our culturally based councils, MPHC and MGC, have time with her, right? Whether it's a meeting a semester, whether it's being at her roundtables that she hosts for student leaders, being there, but then also being prepared to be in those spaces, right? Not just being someone at the table, but someone that's vocal and can really express what your needs are. Because then I think sometimes students are like, well, I'm not sure what to ask for, right? We need money, but what are we going to use it for? So as an advisor, it's important to help them understand what they can maximize those funds for. Our alumni office does campaigns where you can do, they call it Cane Funder. It's an online page. Our councils can be listed on there. And so money can be generated if they promote the link throughout the year during the fundraising day for the university. And it specifically goes to the council, and then the council can decide how to use those funds. We also have opportunities where, I mean, obviously if there's a way for me to manage my budget, I know if an IFC fraternity is coming to campus, we usually pay for like their parking or a gym membership or something like that. That's when I know, same thing with a culturally based group. They may not have the funds, but I'll find the funds somewhere to ensure where a campus that you have to pay anywhere you park. That I make that just as accessible to them, that the alumni coming in the evening to have meetings, that their parking is covered, right? Even if it's just a simple opportunity for that. And then I would say the other thing, sometimes referendums on student government platforms for funding is important. If your council can put on their agenda, hey, can we get 5 cents, 10 cents per every student from the student activity fee towards our council for operational funds, because not only are we an HSI and we are a positive contributor to this campus for retention and success, your funding would help us and the larger campus community through the programs that we provide and the education that we provide. So those are ways, like our MPHC receives a certain percentage from each student activity fee that's collected. So that's like a small budget they start off with the year.
So I know we're running out of time, and we definitely want to respect folks' time being with us. And so we will certainly, collect what folks have shared, what Cristina has shared, as well as collect some kind of information for you all around this topic, as well as the other question that we unfortunately did not get to. I'll just quickly share that, at the University of Arizona, I know, and Kimberly, you actually mentioned this earlier, but for KDCI, we would have alum create kind of a fundraising campaign to help sisters go to regional conferences. So as we talk about alumni engagement, this could be one way, right, where you grab a group of alum and create a campaign where you can fundraise, right? This is, again, when we talk about volunteering as alum, there are many ways that could mean physically going somewhere, leading a meeting, leading a workshop. It could also mean what I can do right now is donate $50, right? That is a way to engage. And so, how do you find those different ways to engage your alum in some of these fundraising efforts when these organizations are in need of that? So I just want to say, thank you so, so much for everyone who joined us. And we were, again, really excited to put on this webinar during HSI Week. So again, this is National HSI Week. We hope that you're engaging across the nation with different organizations and within your own institution to learn more about what it means to be an HSI and what is happening across the country at different HSIs. I want to especially thank our panelists. It is always amazing to hear, of course, from our students. Y'all are in the thick of it right now. And so we obviously wish you the best on your continued educational journey, but we really, really, really want to say thank you because again, you all need to tell us as staff, as advisors, as leaders in national organizations what you need and how we can better serve you. And so I just, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be on this panel because I know y'all are very busy. And then to Christina and Manny, y'all have served in multiple capacities over the years from undergrad till now. And so again, thank you for bringing your expertise. It was really exciting to get to know a little bit more about you all, but to see, right, what's happening at a national level, what's happening within the state of Florida, within Colorado, within your own national organizations. And so again, I know y'all are very busy too. Y'all do a lot of kind of HSI work too, or, Rush may have just happened or is happening. And so I know it's a busy time in the educational world. So again, thank you for taking the time. And then to Dr. Franco, always a pleasure to have you kind of open the space up, set a precedent for what we're going to be talking about. And then to our viewers, of course, thank you. We know you're busy. And so again, we will be following up with some information and some recommendations for you all, and we will be gathering the information that you all inputted. And so I'm going to drop it one more time in the chat. And so when you have time or when you've let it percolate a little bit, if you want to go ahead and let us know what you think about these two questions, we'll be bringing this together as well in a one-pager. So again, thank you everybody, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your week.